So in this video, I'm going to show you how I set up a one-click LAMP stack on DigitalOcean, and LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. I've been using DigitalOcean for about 10 years. I love them. I think they're a great company, and they have very affordable hosting, especially for a really simple setup like a LAMP stack. Perfect for static websites, exactly the type of thing that we build on this channel. So I have a GitHub repository, which is linked down in the description, and everything that we do today is documented in this GitHub repository. We're just going to follow this GitHub repository and do the entire setup, but everything starts in DigitalOcean. So if you haven't created an account yet, go ahead and create an account. I do have a link in the description. It's an affiliate link. If you use my link, I do get credit if you sign up, and you will also get, I think, 2 months free. You don't have to use the link, but it's there if you would like to. So go ahead and sign up for an account. Once you log in, I recommend over here on the left-hand side that you create a project. In fact, you're probably going to be required to create a project. I have a project here called Fiber and Craft, and that's it. We don't have anything else yet. So I'm going to come up here and click this green button called Create and create a droplet. And the first thing that they want us to do is choose a region. Now, I live in the Midwest. I live in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and I generally choose New York. I could probably choose San Francisco or Atlanta. I'm kind of in the middle of everything. I think generally you would want to pick a region that is as close to your area, your location in the world. I tend to pick New York, and that works really well for me. Don't pay any attention to the price down here in the lower left-hand corner. That's going to change as we choose our options. Next, we're going to go to choose an image and marketplace. And we want the LAMP on Ubuntu 24.04. I'm going to select that. Add a worry-free managed database. No, I don't need a database. This is a static website. I generally choose a shared CPU basic, and I choose the regular CPU option. And I'm going to choose the $6 a month option. This is 1 gig CPU, 25 gigs of SSD disk space, and 1,000 gigs of transfer. This is usually plenty for a static website. In fact, you could put a handful of static websites on this little server and you would be just fine. Additional storage. Nope, we don't need additional storage. Enable an automated backup plan. It really depends on your situation. I am not going to choose this because this is just a personal site. And I also, since it's a static website, I kind of consider my GitHub repository as a bit of a backup. I also have a local copy. So I'm not going to choose this. Now, if this was a client site or an enterprise level production site, yeah, I might go ahead and choose this. I think it is good to have multiple redundant backups, but for our situation, no, I'm not going to choose this. Next, authentication method. I highly recommend that you always choose SSH key. Do not choose password. In fact, once we get logged into the droplet, I'm going to disable root login and password login. I have 3 SSH keys loaded into my DigitalOcean account, and I'm going to select all 3. If you need to create an SSH key, or if you want to create a new SSH key, click on New SSH Key. Follow the instructions to do so. I also have a link in the repo if you're on Mac or Linux. If you're on Windows, go ahead and Google it. It's a very common tutorial. You won't have any trouble finding instructions. And then you will paste the public key pair here in this space. I highly recommend that you use the SSH key authentication method. Next, add improved metrics. It's free, so yes, I am going to check this. And next, I'm going to change the droplet name or the host name, and I'm just going to call it Fiber and Craft, just like that. No, I'm not going to add any tags. You can see here that it wants you to choose a project, so I'm going to choose the project that we designated. The cost here has updated to $6 a month. That's perfect, and we're going to create the droplet. And that took I think that took about 90 seconds. I don't even think it took a full 2 minutes, but you can see here now we have our IP address for the droplet. So I'm going to copy this, and the next thing I'm going to do is update my DNS settings on Hover. I keep all of my domain names on Hover. I do have a domain called fiberandcraft.com, and we can look here at the overview. there's just some details about the renewal price and when I registered it, when my next renewal date is. There are two ways to point a domain name to a hosting provider. We could do the name servers here down in the lower left-hand corner, which default to hover. I'm not going to point the name servers. I'm actually just going to manage the DNS settings. These are the default DNS settings that hover assigns to a domain name, and I don't need any of these. MX records are related to email, so if you're using your domain name for email, don't delete your MX records. But I don't need this for email, so I'm going to go ahead and delete these, and I'm going to delete these A records. And I'm going to create two new records. I'm going to create a new A record. The host name is the @ symbol and our new IP address. We'll click Add Record. And I'm going to create a CNAME record. The host name is www, and the target name is the domain name, so fiberandcraft.com. Did I spell everything correctly? Yes. And the TTL for both of these is 15 minutes. I can tell you that domain and DNS settings, in my experience, generally propagate pretty quickly, like usually within about 10 or 15 minutes. Technically, they can take 24 to 48 hours. I think part of that has to do with your location in the world. I'm in a big metro area, so things tend to update pretty quickly. But if it takes 24 to 48 hours, that is not that unusual. So just be aware. But I think if you do this right away, by the time you're done with the server setup, these domain settings will be propagated. So now we're going to go back to DigitalOcean, and we are going to add this domain name to this server. So we want to click on Manage DNS on DigitalOcean. And we are going to add a domain. So our domain is fiberandcraft.com. And this is our project, Fiber and Craft. We'll add the domain. And right away we get something here that says, what's next? You need to update your name servers with your domain register for the records below to take effect. So actually we don't need to do that because we are not managing our domain using the name servers. We're just pointing an A record and a C name. That's all that we're doing. Now, DigitalOcean puts in some default name servers. I recommend just leaving these. Don't delete these. We're going to create now two records, and it's the same records that we created over on Hover. So we're going to do an A record. The host name is an @ symbol, and go ahead and choose your droplet. And the TTL is 3,600 seconds. That's perfect. We'll create the record. And we're going to create a CNAME. And the host name is www, and the alias is fiberandcraft.com. And I have to make sure I spelled everything correctly. I'm going to change the TTL to 3,600, and we'll create the record. So now we have all of our DNS settings up to date, and we can go ahead now and log into our server. So let's get back to our project. And I'm just going to copy that IP address again. And if we look here at our, so we've done the first two things, right? We did the one-click install. We updated our DNS settings. Now we're going to do the droplet setup, and we're going to log in initially as root, but hang tight. We are going to create something called a Sudo user, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So I'm going to type in SSH root at the IP address. And if you're logging into your server for the first time, this is the message that you're going to get. This key is not known. Are you sure you want to continue? And just go ahead and type yes. Beautiful. So now we are logged into the DigitalOcean server, and there's always this welcome screen when you log in. There's also something here called the message of the day. And the first thing that I do is I delete the message of the day. And it says down here to delete this message, go ahead and run this remove command. So I'm going to do that first. The next thing that we need to do is update and upgrade, because this is a snapshot. It's not current. This is maybe a week or a month old. I have no idea how old it is, but we're going to run apt update and apt upgrade, and we're going to have this yes flag. So we'll copy this in right here. And this will take a few minutes, maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes, something like that. Okay, and this is also pretty common. It's saying, what do you want to do about the modified configuration file? And it's defaulting to keep the local version currently installed. And yeah, that's exactly what we want to do. So go ahead and hit Tab on your keyboard to highlight OK and enter. Okay, so next it says optional reboot if kernel updates were installed. And honestly, I just reboot every single time. So I'm just going to type in reboot, and that will immediately close the connection. I'm going to just clear the terminal, and we're going to wait a minute or so and try to log back in. Give it a chance to reboot. Okay, let's try to log back in. Excellent. So everything is updated. 0 updates can be applied. We cleared the message of the day. Perfect. So next, let's just check what's installed. So we'll check Apache. Perfect. We'll check MySQL. Good, good, good. And we'll check PHP. And then we're just going to check and make sure, we're going to check the status of Apache. We're just checking to make sure that Apache is up and running. I'm pretty sure it is, but it's good to check. So really, this is all I'm looking for. Active, running, good to go. So I'm going to hit Q to quit that. Beautiful. So next, we're going to check the firewall, and we're going to type in UFW status. UFW stands for uncomplicated firewall, and that comes sort of pre-bundled with the DigitalOcean LAMP install. So UFW status, and this is the expected output. So as long as this is the output that you get, this is good. This is what we want. Next, we need to create a non-root sudo user. We are pretty soon here. We're going to disable root access, and we want to make sure that we have what's called sudo user. So I'm going to use the name Angela as a sudo user. You can use any name you want as a sudo user, but that's the name that I'm going to use. Also, when we add the sudo user, it's going to ask us this series of questions, and we're just going to enter right past them. You don't have to answer these questions. So let's add user Angela. And you do have to give your user a password. You're going to have to type, and it's a password that you're going to need to remember, because you're going to have to type that password in at least once per session. The first time you log into your server and you type in sudo to do a command, it's going to ask for a password. So make sure if it's a complicated password, make sure you write it down someplace. So I'm going to type in my password and type it in again. And then I'm just going to enter past these questions, and yes. Perfect. Now we have to add Angela to the sudo group. Sudo is an actual group. So we're going to say user mod add to group sudo Angela. Perfect. Now, we have those SSH keys that we chose when we were installing the Droplet. Those SSH keys were installed specifically on the root user. We need to copy those SSH keys over to the Angela user. So let's go ahead and do that next. I'm just going to clear the console. So we're going to make that SSH directory for Angela. And then we're going to copy the keys from root. So we'll just copy and paste this. And of course, you're going to update that username to whatever it is that you decided to use. Whoops. And then we're going to change the ownership and the read, write, execute permissions of .ssh. So first we change the ownership. Then we're going to change the read, write, execute permissions. Perfect. Next, we need to disable the root login with SSH, and we're going to be using something called the nano editor. And I just put a little box here to show you how we save and exit Nano. So it's Control X, Y, enter again. So we're going to do this a couple of times. So I'll talk through it, but I just wanted to sort of point out that I did type it here in case you sit down and do this yourself and you don't remember how to exit out. So we need to go now to this sshd config file. So we're going to say nano, and then we're going to pull up this file and edit this file. And we're looking for two things. We're looking for something that says permit root login, and we're going to change it to no. And we're looking for password authentication, and we're also going to change this to no. So I'm just using my trackpad to scroll down, and I can also use the arrow keys to move around. So permit root login, we're changing that from yes to no. And now we're looking for password authentication. And it's right here. So password authentication is commented out. We're going to remove that. And then we're going to change this from yes to no. And then I hit, you can see down here, to exit, we want to do Control X, yes, enter. And that's how we exit and save that file. We're going to do that a couple more times. Next, we need to reload SSH. So I'm going to take this. And now we want to reconnect as the new user. So I'm going to exit, clear the terminal. And now we want to log back in as so this will be a test to see if our DNS settings have propagated, but we should be able to log back in this way. We'll find out. We're going to find out together. Okay. And the reason that I'm getting this message, and I forgot about this, the reason I'm getting this message is because I've actually set up this domain name several times before. This is probably my 5th or 6th time doing this. And what we need to do is on your local environment, you have something called a list of known hosts, and we just need to clear that list because I've already done this authentication several times with different IP addresses. So the way we clear that is we just type in ssh-keygen -R and fiberandcraft.com. And this says that we removed that from our local known hosts. That's just a file that you have locally. So if you run into this, if you destroy your Droplet and reset it up several times using the same domain name and you see this message, that's what's happening. So now let's try to log in again. And now we're getting that same message that we got when we logged in the first time as root. It's basically saying, hey, do you trust this? Are you sure? And we're going to type yes. And now we are logged in and we can see our dashboard again. And we don't have to do any security updates. So this is perfect. This means now that we have disabled root login. We can log in as the domain name. So this means that our domain has propagated if we were able to use the domain name. So that's good. And we're logged in as our sudo user, which is a best practice. It's the safe way to do things. So let's go ahead and clear the terminal. So where do our files on the server actually live? So I'm going to cd to var www, and then I'm going to list the files. And you can see here there's a folder called HTML. So I'm going to cd into HTML, and then we'll list these files. And DigitalOcean automatically puts an index.html file into this HTML directory. So we should be able to go now to fiberandcraft.com. And it says this site can't be reached. And that's because browsers are defaulting to HTTPS, but we haven't installed HTTPS. So come up to your browser here, delete that S, and it says it's not secure, but this is the default index.html page that DigitalOcean put in this directory. So that means that this is working. Our domain settings have propagated. We pointed our domain to the server, and that's good. That's good. This is exactly what we want to see. The other thing I want to point out here is that there's an owner and there's a group for every file and every directory. www-data is the default Apache owner and group, and generally that's what you want. But we are going to add the sudo user to the www-data group. And that is so we can rsync from our local environment to the remote environment without having to change permissions. So that's what this next set of instructions is. We're going to add the sudo user to the data group. So we're going to sudo the user mod add group www-data Angela. And it's asking me for my sudo password, so I'm going to type that in. And then we have to log out and log back in for the group change to take effect, so I'll type exit. And then I'm going to SSH back in again. And we see our welcome screen. And now I'm going to look at the groups. And you can see here, Angela, sudo, www-data, users. Perfect. So I'm going to clear the terminal. So now we need to fix some permissions. It says here that 775 gives group write access. So Angela, as part of the www-data group, can update files without breaking Apache ownership. So we're going to change the ownership. Well, really, if we go, let's cd. And then we'll cd in here. So you can see here that we already have, it's already www-data, but let's go ahead and run this again. I don't think it's going to change anything. Yeah, it's exactly the same. So even if it's already, the owner is already www-data, it doesn't hurt to run this again. And then we're going to just make sure that the read, write, execute is still accurate. And it did change the read, write, execute here. You can see that. It changed it. The 775 changed the permissions. You can see from up here to down here. So, and then it says here, if you want to make sure all future files keep that group, we can run this. Perfect. So now we're ready to actually deploy something. We're ready to deploy our files. And this is called Rsync. And this is where we move our local files to our remote server. And in order to do that, we need a new terminal tab. So this is my server, this is my remote tab, and then this is my local tab. And we have this Rsync. So let me just copy this here. And then I can explain a little bit about what's going on. And so there's a couple things going on here. So we start with Rsync, and then we have some flags, AVZ, so archive, compress. Then we have a flag for progress, which means it's going to list out the files. Delete means that it's going to keep the remote in sync. So it's going to delete anything. If there's something in the remote that is not in the local, it's going to delete those files and then keep the files in sync. And then we have a list of files that we're excluding, directories and files. So I'm excluding anything with git. So we have here exclude git ignore, exclude GitHub, exclude dsstore. This is this goofy file that MacOS always adds to everything that's hidden. I'm excluding the README. I'm excluding the license. Then I have a path to my local directory, and we're going to deploy a landing page in my local directory in a folder called Coming Soon. And then the last part of the path is how we log in, angela@fiberandcraft.com, and then the path to this location on the server. And I have a note up here. Just remember that the trailing slash in your local directory path matters. So for users, Angela J. Holden, projects coming soon, / syncs the contents of the folder. Without the slash, it would nest inside the folder. So it would look like this on the remote directory. And we don't want this. We just want the contents of coming soon to go inside HTML. So trust me, you're going to make that mistake about 150 times throughout your career. And you're going to be really good at fixing it, but I did put it in here just as a reminder. So I have this copied in here. I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter. And it says here rsync error. Don't worry about any of this because the stuff, if the stuff got synced, it got deployed up to the remote, because we can see here it listed it all out. So if we come over here to our browser and we refresh the page, now we are seeing our landing page. So that means that our server is set up, our domain name is working. We can deploy our files from our local environment. So this is great. So the next thing that we need to do now is we really need to deal with these domain names. Technically, you're going to have 4 domain names for one page, and that's because we've got, I'm going to show you here. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. We have 4 versions. We have 4 versions. We have HTTP and we have HTTPS. We've got the root domain, and then we've got the www. And here's why you need to make sure that you are including www for both versions of the domain. It's just because of the sheer number of people who go to an address bar and they type in www. And the reason we need to create an SSL certificate for www is because, and I think I even have it here, we have to install an SSL certificate on both of the root and the www, even if we're just doing a redirect to the root. Browsers are checking the domain on port 443 first, and if the SSL TLS handshake fails, there's no certificate, then it can't complete the redirect. Make sure you install the SSL certificate on both versions of the domain. And yes, we are using Let's Encrypt, which is totally free, so you have nothing to lose. So we use Certbot for this. And I do have something here to make sure the DNS is ready. We know our DNS is ready, but we can still go ahead and ping the DNS. So there it's just doing little pings. So I'm going to Control C to stop. Perfect, that's working. And we're going to use Certbot to install SSL, which does come with the one-click lamp, but just go ahead and make sure that it is installed. Oh, and we're on our local version. Look at that. So go back over to your remote version. And Certbot 2.9.0. Perfect. If for some reason it's not installed, this is how you can install it. So I did include something here just in case you need to install it. And then we want to run Certbot's Apache plugin, and we're requesting a certificate for the root domain and the www version. And you definitely want to enter your email address, because Certbot will renew the domain certificate every 90 days. And if there's a problem with the renewal, you absolutely want to get that email. So I'm going to type in my email address. And I'll say yes to the terms and conditions. And I'm going to say yes to sharing my email address. And now it's requesting a certificate. Okay, and so it says here successfully received certificate, and it says where the certificate is saved and where the key is saved. This certificate expires on January 25th, 2026. These files will be updated when the certificate renews. Certbot has set up a scheduled task to automatically renew this certificate in the background, and we're going to take a look at that in a minute. Deploying certificate, successfully deployed the certificate for fiberandcraft.com, and it gives us the path here in the Apache configuration, and the name of the configuration file is right here. We were unable to find a virtual host with a server name or address of www.fiberandcraft.com. Which virtual host would you like to choose? Go ahead and choose number 2. This is the certificate that Certbot created. So go ahead and choose whatever they successfully deployed. That's the one that you want to choose. So we're going to choose number 2. And it says, congratulations, you have successfully enabled HTTPS on fiberandcraft.com and www.fiberandcraft.com. Perfect. So now we have our HTTPS, our SSL certificates, and we need to go ahead, although I'm pretty sure they already did it, but we're going to go ahead and do it anyways. We just want to make sure that we are enabling this configuration. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and I'm going to clear the console. And it says it's already enabled. Excellent. And I'm just going to reload Apache. Perfect. And then if you find yourself in a redirect loop, I'm not going to go into too much detail about what that is, but if you find yourself in a redirect loop, try to run this. That might actually help. Okay, so we want to do something called the auto renewal check. Certbot sets up something called a list timer, and it pings it's basically a timer to check twice a day, about every 12 hours, to see what the date of the certificate is. And as soon as it's within 30 days of renewal, it's just going to go ahead and renew. So let's see if the timer is working. And the timer is working. Perfect. And if you want to go ahead and do a manual renewal, you can, and you can even do a dry run just to see how it would look if you decide to do it. We don't need to do it here. I'm confident that everything is working. And then we're going to go ahead and check the certificates. Just want to confirm what I already believe is true. So the certificate name is fiberandcraft.com, and the domains are fiberandcraft.com and www.fiberandcraft.com. Perfect. Okay, so now if we refresh, now we're getting the HTTPS version. The problem is we have both versions. And even though a browser is always looking for HTTPS first, HTTP still exists. There are 4 versions of this domain name for one page, and we need to make sure that everything is redirecting back to the root. And to be clear, it doesn't matter what you choose for your domain. If you want your domain to be www, then that is perfectly fine. You can set that up, but you have to pick one and make sure that everything else redirects back to that choice. So in order to do that, this part admittedly is a little bit scary, but I think that if you got this far, you can absolutely handle it. And I think I did a really good job documenting it. So we're going to do it together. We are going to edit the Apache virtual host files. We have to edit the port 80 virtual host, which is HTTP, and the port 443 virtual host, which is HTTPS. So first, we actually need to open up this configuration file. So I'm just going to copy this path right in to the terminal. And we are now editing the virtual host file for port 80. So inside this virtual host file, we need to add these 3 things: a server name, a server alias, and a redirect for both of these things to the HTTPS version of our site. So I'm going to come right in here, and your mouse isn't really going to work in any of these files. You're just going to use your arrows in your keyboard. So server name, fiberandcraft.com, server alias, fiberandcraft.com, and redirect 301 / for the root of both of those, and then HTTPS fiberandcraft.com. Yeah, I probably could have copied and pasted them in there, but I guess I typed them. And then we need to comment out these 4 rewrite lines at the bottom of this file. So I'm just going to use my keyboard to arrow down, and I'm just going to comment these out with a hash. I'm not going to delete them because I'm kind of a big baby and I don't like deleting things if I don't have to. And this is all we need to do now in this file. So Control X, yes, and F to save. And I'm just going to take a peek at it again to make sure everything looks good, and it does. Good. Okay, so there we go. We just edited the port 80 virtual host. Now we're going to edit the port 443. So I'm going to, this is the path to that configuration file, and open it up. And really what we need to do here is we need to add the server name and the server alias, and we need to add these rewrite rules. So I am going to copy these in. We can copy these in, no problem. And I see down here at the bottom, server name is already here. So I'm just going to delete this. Control K to delete that. And this all looks good. I'm not going to change anything else here. I'm just sort of scanning it to make sure I didn't spell anything wrong or miss anything. Okay, so Control X, yes, enter. And I'm just going to take a peek at that again to make sure everything's saved, and it did. So Control X. Excellent. Honestly, I think the virtual hosts are the hardest part. They're the scariest part for me. So, okay, make sure the rewrite module is enabled and reload Apache. So we already did this once. I'm going to do it again because even if it's fine, it doesn't hurt anything to do it. So I'm just going to run that again, and it says it's already enabled. Beautiful. And then I'm going to reload Apache. Okay, so now we want to test our redirects and make sure everything is redirecting to the correct place. So first, let's test the HTTP version. And this should be a 301 redirect to the HTTPS version. And it is. So we've got 301, and then here's the location. This is our desired domain. Now let's check the HTTP www. Beautiful. 301 location HTTPS fiber and craft. Now this is our preferred. This is what we want. So this should be a status 200. It is perfect. Status 200. Okay. And then finally, we're going to check the HTTPS version of www. Beautiful. Status 301 moved permanently. And here is our desired location. Love it. So now let's go back to the browser, and you can see here that that's our root. So let's type in www and should automatically redirect. There, beautiful. Let's try this in, we'll try this in incognito. Perfect. And I know I'm not going to be able to force. Yeah, because it's already it's defaulting to port 443, but you're gonna have to trust me. You need to make sure you have a redirect in place for the non-HTTP, for the port 80, the HTTP version of the domain. So, what is next on the list? I think that's it. We did it. We did it. So now we can log out of the server. We're done. I recommend that you log into your server once, I don't know, every week or so. Do the updates. I would actually recommend that you spin up a new server at least once a year. There's a saying in DevOps, treat your server like cattle, not like pets. It is not a pet. DigitalOcean makes it incredibly easy to destroy a droplet and spin up a new one. Get into the habit of multiple backup redundancies, whether you choose backups on DigitalOcean or if it's a static site and you use your Git repository as a backup, that's perfectly fine. It's worth noting that, or I hope you notice that this is completely independent from Git. So pushing to your Git repository doesn't have any impact on DigitalOcean. They are not connected. So you should still be pushing to Git separately and then deploying or rsync up to your remote environment separately as your final step in your production. And speaking of which, let's go ahead. We have this coming soon page, but really what I would like to do is I would like to deploy the actual website for this domain name. So this site is finished. We just spent, I think, 4 weeks working on this during the live streams. This is the intended project for the domain name fiberandcraft.com. So let's go ahead and deploy this with our Rsync. So I'm going to find it here. And we can use the same Rsync. We have to just change the path because we have a different path. So I'll show that to you here. The path right now in the instructions is coming soon, but that's a different path. So we're just going to change that. So here I'm logged out of the server, but I'm still going to flip over here to my local tab, even though both are local. I'm going to copy in, and then I'm going to just use my keyboard to backspace. And the name of my local directory is called nitpix clone. And let's just double check that. And that's what it is. So you can see here, this was the coming soon that we just deployed, but now I want to deploy nitpix clone. And because we have these flags, one of our flags here is delete. It's breaking to the second line, but you can see it there. Rsync is going to check the local and remote and check to see what files are different or have been changed and keep those in sync because we have the delete flag. It's worth noting that these are the files that I'm excluding based on my project and what I'm deploying. Learn a little bit more about Rsync. This is a great topic for ChatGPT if you want to tell ChatGPT what your files are and what you should or shouldn't be excluding from a production environment. I do have a link in the repository to learn a little bit more about Rsync. Decide what you need to exclude based on your own project. This is perfect for both of these projects, so I don't need to change any of these exclusion flags. Make sure that you have a good understanding of what you want to deploy to a production site versus what is okay to sit on a staging site. So now that I've updated this directory, I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And it just deployed all of our files. So I can come over here and refresh. And some of those files are still propagating. So we've got images and HTML, but we don't have CSS yet. I'll refresh again. There we go. Perfect. And I'm going to come over here and we'll just load this up in a new tab. Beautiful. And I'll enlarge this a little bit. And I'm just going to test and make sure that www does redirect. Excellent. Very good. We did it. We set up a server, we edited our DNS, we installed an SSL certificate. So I hope you find this repository and these instructions helpful. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions or concerns, if you ran into any issues. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are.